All right, well, let me start off by introducing myself. I know many of you in here, but I am Pastor Kellen, so I am over our men's ministry. So I lead men's Bible study, which is Tuesday nights, Friday mornings. I also lead our Compass Active ministry. So I think that's why I was given this topic, because that's a ministry that I oversee, and it's related to this in some sense. We just got done with the Spartan race yesterday, so if you see me blinking, it's because I still have mud and dirt in my eyes. It's not because I have a blinking disorder or something. I guess we all blink, so we all have a disorder. That was kind of lame. But yeah, so Compass Active, and then also our Adult Bible Fellowship Ministry, which is meeting right now, which normally teach at 9 a.m. On Sunday morning. This is my wife, Chelsea, over here. So you'll get a chance to meet her a little bit more and know a little bit more of her just when we get up here and do Q&A afterwards. But I want to talk about specifically, like I said, healthy habits, because it's very important. I had a dentist appointment. This was, I think, over a year ago now, and I remember going to my dentist, and the first question that he asked me was, "Did you have trauma early on in your life?" I'm like, I didn't expect that question coming from you today. And he's like, no. Did you have like any type of trauma to your teeth? I don't know. He's like, playing sports or anything like that growing up, did you ever like get hit in the mouth really hard? And I remember when he said that, I'm like, well, there was this one time in college. I remember I caught an elbow right to my front tooth, and it was loose. And I'm like, I'm not going to have a front tooth for the rest of my life. This is weird. But it ended up sticking, growing back together, however God designed the body. But it was not an issue. And so I continued to go on, and there was no issues there with it moving forward. And he was like, "What tooth was that?" And I was like, "My front tooth." And he's like, "Okay, that makes sense. Can you help me out of what you're talking about now?" And he said that, he used the term necrotic tooth. Necrotic tooth. He's like, "You have a necrotic tooth." I'm like, "What does that mean?" And he's like, "Well, what happens is, like, if your teeth have any trauma at any point in time, then it may not show up then, but over a period of time, it can discolor slightly from the rest of your teeth, because it is essentially a dead tooth. And so it's not getting the same amount of blood flow and oxygen as the rest of your teeth are getting. And so it can sort of have a discolor from the rest of your teeth." And that was interesting that he said that, because it happened at this point in time over 20 years ago. And it doesn't bother me anymore, but 20 years ago, something happened, and it's still showing signs of, effect on me today. And it made me think about, as this teaching was coming up and thinking about this, is how often that happens in our life. There's something that happens in your childhood over 20 plus years ago that shapes how you are today. And you can look at how you are today and point right back to it and say, well, that's how my parents did it, or that's how I was raised, or that's how I did things. And so when we think about parenting in general, the beauty of all of this, the things that you are doing today for your children, regardless of if they're, infants to toddlers to teens, you are impressing upon them things that they're going to do for the rest of their life. And that's why we need to take this serious, and then we need to make sure that we invest the right way and invest in a godly way, so that the things that they remember are things that you would be excited about them continuing to do as if they were 20, 30 years old, because of what they learned early on before. And so our topic that we're dealing with today, as I mentioned, is healthy habits and routines. Healthy habits and routines, and we need to see how important that this is, because these routines that you create today, just think about how crazy this is. Your kids, when they, Lord willing, become parents, they're going to do a lot of the same things that you're doing with them today, just in their nature. In their nature, they're not going to think about it. It's going to be like, this is how my parents raised me. This is what they did to me. And that's the things that I'm going to do, because whether right or wrong, it's what I'm used to and what I'm comfortable with. And so when you think about the routines that you're developing with your kids today, we want to invest in them well. We want to think about them and just not mindlessly do them, because they're going to have an impact on how your kids raise their kids and how their kids raise their kids. And it starts with the things that you're doing in the house today. Or if you look at most of the kids that are growing up today, it's more of a sedentary age. This tends to be our kids, more often than we would like to see, is laying on the couch and thinking about, I'm bored or I need something to do. kids just don't go out and play as much as they used to, right? I think you could drive around 20 years ago and you would just see kids all out on the streets. Every once in a while you see that, but I think now it's more foreign. It's like, whoa, what's happening on this street? Is there a party or something? Like, why are there this many kids out? And every once in a while you'll see a kid or a street that is full of kids that are still playing outside. Games that we used to play hide and go seek or tag, it just doesn't happen as much anymore. It's not as natural. As a matter of fact, if you tell a kid, hey, anything about tag, more often than not, they're going to think a gamer tag. They're going to start thinking about video games, and because tag now is the name of your video game name if you play online. And so it's not even the same thing as 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And while it's easy to say, well, back when I was a kid, I used to do this, or I used to go outside and I would play for hours. It's easy to say that. I also think the parenting has become a lot different. As parents nowadays, we've become more lazy when it comes to investing in playing with our kids more so than maybe our parents did or adults did back then. And so I want us to not be so quick to say, man, these kids this day and age are different, but to say, how can we make sure that we're being involved with them, that we're training them, we're making it fun to go out and play and create these healthy habits with your kids. And one of the first passages I want us to think about and jot it down if you haven't already is 1 Timothy 4, verses 7 through 8. 1 Timothy 4, 7 through 8. And I'll jump in right in the middle of this passage, but Paul says this, rather train yourself for godliness. For while bodily training is of some value, right? Going out and exercising and running Spartan races and playing outside and working out, all of those things have some value. They're not bad things. Godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. One word I want to highlight there is that word train, rather train yourself for godliness, right? Bodily training. We need to get an understanding of that word, and I'll take you to the Greek language, but I'll bring you right back to English so you recognize it. That word training is gymnasia, and if you sound it out and you transliterate that back to English, it sounds like gymnasium, right? So that's where we get our word gymnasium from, is training, right? And if you translate that to English, another synonymous word for training is exercise. So you could even say, rather exercise yourself for godliness. And that's what it's all about, right? When we think about that word training, it's just exercise. We need to exercise. That is a biblical thing to do and a God-honoring thing to do for ourselves and especially for our kids as we think about starting to train them up now. We want to train our kids that it's good to exercise. It's good to work our bodies. It's good to sweat. It's good to run around and all of those things. Those are good, godly things to do. They have some value, but godliness is the ultimate thing that we want them to do during that time. So getting out on a bike ride, right? Getting on bikes, riding, running, all of those things are good forms of exercise that we can look at this passage and say God would be pleased with that. But here's a point that I want to make, and you write this down for that first point, is exercise is for God's glory, not yours. Exercise is for God's glory and not yours. Prior to coming into full-time ministry, I used to work in the fitness industry and would see this all the time. You have so many people that they start off by exercising, but then all of a sudden the body becomes an idol, right? That's all they care about is their body, their physique, and how they look, how they appear to other people. And so even as we train our kids, it's important that we remind them, yes, you should work hard. You should want to, build muscle. You should want to get in shape. You should want to do all of these things. But understand, you're doing it for God's glory. You're not doing it so that you can get all these accolades and high fives and have people impressed with you. You're doing it all for God's glory. Exercise is for His glory, not ours. And that starts with being a good steward of the body that God has gifted you with. Right? Reminding your kids that the body that God has given them is a gift. Just like I said, the fact that your child is a gift to you from God, their body that they have, the ability to do whatever they can do physically, is a gift from God that they should want to be good stewards of, right? Even the things that we eat, the way we exercise our body, we want to be good stewards of that. And that should be impressed upon them. We should teach that to them in everything that they're doing. 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20. Paul says, or do you not know that the body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. Everything we're doing, whether you're playing sports, whether you're just working out, whether you're outside playing, you should be thinking about, I want to do this for God's glory, ultimately. Right? This game of hide and seek may have a hard, direct correlation to God's glory with hide and seek, but ultimately you need to think about the main reason that I'm exercising my body is so that I can continue to have energy, continue to do these things to glorify God in all that we do. Exercise is for God's glory, not ours. This car right here is Rolls Royce. It's the most expensive car out there right now. $30 million if you were thinking about buying one. $30 million, Rolls Royce drop tail, and I probably spent too much time trying to figure out $30 million, what is it doing for me? Is it working for me? Is it cooking a meal for me? I don't know. Is it driving on its own for me? And the most I can come up with in a search for this is they developed a color out of a real rose petal. That was one of the fanciest things, and that the door opens backwards. Okay. $30 million, though. $30 million. Rolls Royce drop tail. Most expensive car out there now. Starts at $30 million. Yeah. If you want to put more stuff on it, then it's going to cost you more. And here it is. Here's that door. It opens up that way. Ooh. Right? $30 million. It also comes with like this, $1 million timepiece in the dashboard that you can take out and put back in, whatever. But again, $30 million. I want you to imagine with me for a second that you had a friend that had this car, and they gave you this car. They let you borrow this car and said, hey, I don't want you to just keep it in the garage or be scared of it, but drive it, right? Enjoy it. This is something I want you to enjoy for a month or so because I'm going overseas and then I'll be back, right? Once you finally muster up enough courage to actually sit in the car, which I probably wouldn't, you'd sit in the car, and I'd imagine if you did have the courage to drive it around, think about how careful you would be driving this car around. I mean, you talk about obeying the speed limit, you wouldn't go over the speed limit. If you had to park somewhere, you wouldn't park in the vicinity of that place that you're going to. You'd park somewhere way out that it can't be touched. Right? You just treat it differently. You'd wipe every speck of dust that came on this car off because you know the value of that car. But just think after week one, after month one, and all of a sudden your friend said, hey, you know what? I'm living overseas. I'm not even coming back. Just keep the car. You do whatever you want to with it. So now it's your car. He's giving it to you, $30 million. That's a cool friend to have, I guess, if you have that. But $30 million, he's giving you a car. But just think, if you're still imagining with me, how you would treat that car 6 months into it. All right, I'm sure you'd probably, your foot would get a little heavier. You'd park a little bit closer because it's like, you know what? I got to get in the store. I got to get out. Right? But think a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't treat that car with the same prestige that you did when you got it day one and you thought you had to give it back soon. Because it's yours. You start to think, well, I'll just treat it like I want to treat it. It's my car. What I want you to understand about your body being a gift from God, and I want your kids to understand this, is your body is far more than $30 million. And I can tell you that because if I said, hey, I'll give you $30 million, but I want both of your eyes out and you got to live the rest of your life without your eyes, you'd probably be like, no, I'll pass on that. Why? Because your body is valuable. It's more value than that. And so we need our kids to understand that the reason that we treat our bodies well and we want to steward our bodies because it is a gift from God. A gift from God that he has given us to steward well. And just because time passes by, we can't just say, well, it's my body, I can do what I want and all of those things, because at the end of the day, your body is valuable. Your body is a gift. And we want to treat it that way and think of it as it's worth more than $30 million. But we don't think about it that way, but we need to when we think about how we treat our body and how we train our body so that God is glorified, not you. Here's the things we need to teach our kids is to discipline your body. Part of training your body is disciplining your body, being able to have discipline in the things that you do. Paul says, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. And Paul's talking about preaching, but that same concept there is we need to have that discipline, that self-control of our body, not to just allow anything and everything to happen, but to be disciplined about how we treat our bodies, because we want to glorify God with it and not think it's ours and we can just do what we want to do. So we need to teach our kids that we need to have discipline. There should be routines in our kids' lives of doing things that require discipline. Next thing we need to teach is laziness is condemned by God. So it's not a good thing. Yeah, they might say, hey, I'm bored or I want to sit here, but we need to teach them through, I think the verse is up there, Proverbs 13:4, the soul of a sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. So part of even, earthly success in life and doing things is you got to work hard for it. Right? It just doesn't come easy. One thing that my kids are getting into sports, and it's like, yeah, I want you to play sports, and we'll get to sports here at the last point, but you should want to work hard, right? Not because you want to be, the most popular or anything, but you should want to work hard because that is a godly thing to do, to work hard and not be lazy about anything that we're doing. And that does not please God when we are lazy. That is not a good witness when we are lazy. And so even working hard, not being a sluggard, the proverb tells us that you will be richly supplied. And of course, that's a proverb, doesn't guarantee that, but it's a good thing when you work hard. We don't want our kids to be lazy, and we want them to understand that laziness does not please God. But going back to God's glory, we need to also teach them that working hard, exercising, training our bodies is so that we have energy to serve others. At the end of the day, that's how we point it back to God. We want to work hard because we want to have energy to serve others. You should want to do that even as an adult. I want to work hard. I want to train my body. Not that I become, the next Mr. or Mrs. America, but I want to do that so that I have more energy to invest in my kids, to invest into my church, and to continue to have energy to put others before myself. Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, right? That's what we want to do, and give his life as a ransom for many. We want to model after Jesus and be ready to serve, but exercising is going to give us, our kids, energy to do so, and we need to teach them that. I think I got one more. Yep. The main thing is we need to make it a joy, right? It can't be, because oftentimes the kids are in the house and they're going haywire, and it's like, get outside and go do something, right? Just go run around, go do something. It shouldn't be punitive, right? We want to make it a joy to the best of our ability, because it can be a fun thing, especially with our kids. It should be a fun thing when you get to create those memories and play little games of hide and seek or tag and things like that with your kids. Make it a joy, because the more you make it a joy and not punitive, the more they'll want to do it. And it's going to require you to do it with them a lot more too. So it's going to give you some accountability there as well. But the more you make it a joy, the more that they want to do it, as opposed to feeling like they have to do it because it's become punitive. One of the games my kids are in, this different seasons of games that they have, but we've created a game called balloon tag, which is kind of annoying because I got a longer body than them, and so it's easy for me to tag and make them it all the time. But the balloon tag is you got to throw a balloon, and of course the balloon is going to go wherever it wants to go. You have to throw a balloon, and that's how you get them to be it. And so we've been playing that game, but again, it's a game that they've created. Silly to me. I'd rather just play tag. If we're going to play tag, I want to use my advantages that God has given me. But they want to play balloon tag. And again, it's like they've made up this game. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but let's just play it, because what? We get to run around, we get to have fun, and you get to make it a joy for them and with them. So you think about anything from board games, right? make it a joy. You got a family game night, make it a joy. Don't make it one of those like, oh, we got to do something. Make it a joy. Get involved in it. That's how we create those memories that your kids are going to talk about with their kids. I remember when my mom and dad did this with me, right? We'd go out to the field and we'd play soccer, and yeah, it was chaos, but it was so much fun. Right? Those are the stories that I'm sure, Lord willing, you had parents like that or a parent like that you remember that about them. You remember those times that I'm sure it would have been tiring for them to go do it, but they did it. And those are the ones we take on for decades and decades, right? Doing push-ups with kids on your back. As they get older, it gets a little harder. So, but those are things that are just fun. Going out for walks and runs with your kids, right? Walking around the block, just getting outside and just even having those conversations, seeing who's faster once they start running and things like that, right? Playing and enjoying time with them. Routines today will shape the future. Write that down for point number 2. Routines today will shape the future. One thing early on that my grandfather taught me to do was to change the tire on a car. And I remember being out there at like 8 years old. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why? Why do I need this? Well, if something happens nowadays because of that hour that I wanted to do something else that I thought was so boring, it's skills that I have today. Right? My mom she's very organized, and so there's certain ways that she likes dishes in the dishwasher. And I have that same problem today. You can ask my wife, is I will pull everything out the dishwasher and I will reset it in a way that is good for me. Sounds like an idol, and maybe it is. I need to work on that. We'll get there. But there's little things like, right, every pair, I was the only child in the house, so my mom had time to do this. She didn't have 4, but like all of my socks were together. Like every one of them were together. Even if there were 2 pair of black socks or white socks, she could find the ones that actually would go together based on some trick she had. I don't know. But there's little things like that I still aim to do today. With 4 kids, that kind of goes out the window. But all of those things I learned early on. I'm just watching her or my grandfather, and they're teaching me, they're showing me, and it's still things that I have a tendency to do today. And again, thinking about the investments that you're making today. Even though you might think, man, I don't feel like doing this, these are things that are going to shape their future, and they're going to start teaching their kids based on how you taught them. And one of the big things we need to give our kids and not hold back on at an early age, as soon as they can, give them chores. Give them chores and responsibilities that they have to do. That they have to do, and they have to do it well. Not just do them just to do them, but give them responsibilities that they will have early on in life. Some of them are minor responsibilities that you have. You can delegate those to your kids. One of them is washing the car. I enjoy doing this with my kids, probably more now. I just go through the quick drive express car wash, but we'll spend time. I'll let them vacuum the car out. And I'll tell you right now, that little sign that says, please, maximum 5 minutes, I go over that all the time. Because my kids are with me, it takes way longer than that, right? I even have to double back on the work that they're doing a lot of times, but they get an opportunity to say, I helped Dad wash the car. And so again, I can do it, but they're sitting in the car, and I can start to teach them how to do some of these things that later on, Lord willing, even more than just washing a car, they'll say, I remember doing this with Dad, and I know how to do this. And I got better at doing this because there is an accountability and a standard that eventually I want them to start to meet of doing it well. And so washing cars, right? If you're going to wash your car, if you're going to do laundry, it might be chaotic at first to start to teach your kids to do laundry. It's going to take time. But just like any investment does, it's going to take time at first, and then before you know it, they start doing it well. And this is a skill that they've learned. And so it's all about taking that time now to delegate some of the minor responsibilities that you have, right? Is your car going to be just as clean by having your kids help as if you were going to do it by yourself? Probably not, right? You're going to have a dirty window, but that's okay. That one dirty window, nobody's going to, narc you for that if you're driving on the street. Hopefully not. But again, what did your kids learn from that? They start to learn these little things that will shape their future. But here's the standard that I was talking about, Colossians 3:23-24. As you're teaching them chores to do, we don't want them just to do them just to check the box. We want them to do them well, right? We want them to do them meeting an expectation. We want them to do them as pleasing to the Lord. Right? Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive your inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So yeah, you might be washing the car. You might be picking up the dog poop, which is a chore of one of my kids. You might have to do that, but I want you to do that. I want you to do it well, though, because if you do that well, then that starts to translate into other things in life. When you start to have more responsibilities that are bigger, when you start to have a job, you don't think, well, I'm just going to do this job because somebody asked me. You're going to say, I'm going to do it well because I know that I'm serving the Lord and I want to do it as pleasing to Him. I'm going to fold laundry. I'm going to fold it well. I'm not just going to get the job done. Those are things that you're starting to teach early on today that will make a difference as your kids become teenagers and young adults because you've instilled that into them early on. Routines today that will shape the future. Have a sleep and rest schedule. And I know this is hard, especially nowadays. People are on the run, on the go, and just to sit down and have a consistent sleep pattern. Even you might have Thrive on Thursday nights, and you get to sleep later, or other things going on. But to the best of your ability with your schedule, the better you can have your kids on a schedule, and it's not just like come and go, sleep wherever you can. Then the better it's going to be for them. The better it's going to be for you. Right? And you want to start to develop those routines now, right? We want to try to go to bed at a certain time. Oh, maybe they're not tired or they had dessert and so they're all wired up. Well, guess what? It's still, we have to have discipline to have to the best of our ability, a time that we're going to start to wind down. And we're going to have a time that we get up in the morning. Well, they had a long night and, there's some one-offs there, but, it's not one day they get up at 6, one day they get up at 9. We should say, hey, we're going to have a time where we get up because we got to get our day started. As you grow older, as you know, you're going to have a job and a responsibility of going to school at a certain time. You don't get to say, well, today was my late day to sleep in, so I hope no. Eventually, you're going to have to start to have more rigor with your schedule. And we want to help our kids think about that now. Rest schedules. Well, even if they're not tired, right? Kids need to be able to say, I need to sit down and relax. So maybe your kid has a nap time, or maybe they're transitioning out of a nap time and they don't need naps anymore. Well, you should still have a rest time throughout the day, right? We don't want to just run them to empty and then all of a sudden you hit that empty tank with kids, and that's not a pretty thing, right? But you want to have that rest time. Go read a book. This is a time that you need to sit and then just rest your mind, rest your body, so that when it's time to go again, you have that energy and you have those routines within your life, right? We are called to rest, like God has designed us to rest. We have, we had the Sabbath day before, and He's given us 6 days that He created creation, and on the 7th day He rested, right? That is a model for us, and even us as adults, right? We need to have that day of rest in order for us to be at our best as we are when we are being active, when we are doing things. Our kids need to have that early on, have that good pattern of sleep and rest. And here's the other thing. You're not always going to be able to stick to it, precisely. I've seen that go on the other side of it. It's like, hey, I can't do anything because 3 o'clock I got to go home. My kid has to have a nap and everything has to stop. You don't want to get to the point where that's your goal, is making sure you get to that 3 o'clock time in everything that you do. But at the same time, you want to do to the best of your abilities to start those routines and rest schedules now. You determine what and when your kids eat. This is another hard one, right? Sometimes it's easier just to give your kid a snack than just to hear them screaming and talking about what they want and just eating snacks all day as opposed to a meal. But as parents, as you have young kids, and even as they start getting older and having opinions about what they will eat and what they won't eat and what time they want to eat, you giving them that pattern throughout the day will be beneficial for them, because it is a routine that they need to know that you don't just get anything and everything whenever you want, right? When it's time to eat, you eat. When we're eating this, we're going to be grateful for it, and we're not going to say, I don't want that. I only want mac and cheese and chicken nuggets and pizza, right? We got to start that today. And it's hard. I get it. But what I know is if a kid gets hungry enough, they start to eat, right? It's easy when you had a snack 30 minutes before to say, I don't want that. But when you say this is what the family is having for dinner, And unless you have some allergy or you can just tell like that's just something they just don't eat, then help them understand we need to be grateful for the things that we have. And we as parents need to determine what they eat, when they eat, not vice versa. Because again, we need to get to the point of caring what goes into our body. 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do all to the glory of God. If kids could eat ice cream 3 days or three servings a day, 3 meals a day, and that's it, they would do that. But you and I know, they don't quite know that yet. Some of them do as they get older. That's not going to go well for you. So it's our responsibility as parents to help them understand that our body is a gift and we need to care what goes into our body. And here's the other thing I put on there: sit, eat, and talk. When there's an opportunity to do that, sit, eat, and talk. These are where the great conversations happen with your kids that they'll talk about later on. I remember sitting at the dinner table and we would just have discussion about whatever, right? What happened today at school? What they learned in Awana, what they learned at church, what friends are they making? They may have some difficulties at school. Like, what are those difficulties? This is a great time where it happens. My wife's family used to do this well. I think probably too well. They were the ones that would sit at a restaurant for like 3 hours, and you could see the waitress just getting a little frustrated because it's like, I need to turn this table over because I need to get another table in here. But it was something for me to get used to because my family was in and out. Like, we would eat meals around the TV, watching a sports game, and so that was our entertainment. And had great parents, but it was just different for me. And so they would just talk, her family would just talk the whole time. But one thing they knew is they knew everything that was going on in the family, right? Because things would come up organically in those conversations. I just think when we have time to do that, it's great to be able to do that with our kids, starting at an early age. Let's sit at the table together. We can turn the TV off, and let's entertain each other by having these conversations, as opposed to missing an opportunity to do that when it's one that we can get easily within our home. Last thing here is input affects productivity output. Again, what you put into your body is what you get out, right? You feed your body with junk. You know this as an adult, then it starts to affect your performance. It starts to affect how you think, start to affect just your temperament, all of those things. It does the same thing with your kids. They don't realize that, but you have to realize that for them. And so we want to do the best of our ability to get them things that are going to help them. I know it's easier to feed them things that taste good and are sweet and all that stuff, and sometimes it solidifies what's going on, or it just shuts down what's going on there, the problem of screaming in the back seat or whatever it might be. But we have to be cognizant of everything that you put in your kid. That's going to affect the output of how they act, how they respond, and we need to take better investment in that when we do it. Here's the last one I want to get to. Sports are great when managed properly. Sports are great when managed properly. I had the opportunity to play all the way up to the college level with basketball, and it was great. God taught me a lot there that I can still use today that translates from playing sports, and I did that all day, every day growing up. And so I was practicing even at 6 years old, 7 years old, 4 or 5 days a week doing something, right? Basketball, or football, or training, something. It was my life. And to the point of on the weekends, I grew up going to church, but if I had a sporting event on the weekend, then I would go to that, right? That took priority over us going to church. If I had a tournament, then I was going there. And that's just what we did. But that's also what I remember because, I can have parents that are taking me to church that are teaching me things about God's word, but at the end of the day, when push comes to shove and there's a conflict there, sports always won. And so that's how I grew up, and that's still, even growing up into early adulthood, I had that thought of like, sports matter, right? And to me, that was one of the hardest things to do, even becoming a believer. It's not an issue anymore, but like having kids and things like that, I always wanted them to be involved in sports. But then it comes to a point where you have to start teaching your kids God is far more important than sports. Yes, it's far more important than sports. Sports may take you some places. Some people, it may take them a little further than others. And praise God, I think there's some good things, but it can never, for us, training our kids and starting to develop these habits and routines, the minute you start pointing them to tournaments and all of that stuff, and that replaces church on the weekends, that speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. And you may tell them, hey, God is more important. We care more about the church, but it all shows in your actions. And I can just tell you again from firsthand experience, the second that the sports start usurping going to church on the weekend, that's going to speak volumes for later on in their life. Right? And I'm not saying we can't, go on Saturday as opposed to Sunday, but it shouldn't always be what is the sport. The sports dictates how we or when we attend church. Can't be that way, and that's when I start to talk about when we don't manage it properly, when we start letting sports drive it. And again, that is a temptation when you start to have your kids. If they want to play sports, you want them involved in everything. It's going to be harder for them to get on a team because these teams play on Sunday or this team practices on Thursday and Awana's on Thursday. You're going to have to make those decisions. But the decisions that you make, the more you make that are leading towards sports as opposed to church, that will stick with them. Doesn't matter what you say, it's about your actions, what you do. And I can tell you that just from the standpoint of it happened to me. And my parents, again, they are involved in church. But when it came to sports, that always took the priority. And we have to manage that properly. Because here's the fact of the matter. When it comes to your kids and thinking that, hey, my kid has a talent. They might make it. I've come here this morning partly to be a dream crusher. Your kid's not going pro. They're not going pro. And if you're part of that 2% there, and that number, I'll tell you what that 2% is. If you're part of that goes pro, you can come back and say, told you, Pastor Kellen, and I'll eat it all day long. I'll say, you were right. But statistically showing, I'll be okay there, okay? And I'm not saying that because I don't want them to get involved in sports. Like I said, sports are great. They are great, great, great. Get your kids involved in sports. It will teach them a lot. However, they need to understand what comes first, because here's this breakout from NCAA.org, and this starts, the lowest level is high school student athletes. So a lot of kids that are playing sports now, they won't make the high school, they won't be on the high school team. They won't be on the high school team. Some of them will end their career before high school. And again, it's okay. But this is just based on every student athlete that plays varsity sports in high school. Any given year, there's over 7 million of them, right? 500,000 playing basketball, women's basketball, 1 million playing football, baseball, 482, men's hockey, not many people care that much about. If you play hockey, sorry, I'm not trying to offend you. That's just stats. I'm just saying. But then you look at it. Look at that trim there. From those that are playing high school varsity sports to those that then go at any level of college, right? Division 1, 2, 3, wherever it is. I mean, look at that number. 7% of them. 7% make it to some sort of level of college sports. And then you go in there from that. This is, again, starting at high school, not just every student. These are people that play varsity sports. From them going from high school to getting to college to a professional level, it's 2%. And the only reason it's 2% is because it's inflated by baseball that has 500 different minor leagues, right? And men's hockey, which I didn't know has a lot of minor leagues, I guess, right? But if you look at, like, example, men's basketball, there's only a couple minor. There's a minor league, and then you can play in a lot of leagues overseas and call yourself a pro. But only 1% of high school basketball players are making it to any sort of professional. So the chances are slim, very slim. And so having a mentality of saying, I want my kid to, the thing I care about most is their salvation, and then trying to have them in sports. It's very tempting to say, I want my kid to be the best player out there, because guess what? It makes me look good as a parent. It makes my kid get all the accolades and things like that. But they need to know, and you need to understand, it's not likely that they're going to go pro. It's not likely that they're going to make it to college. Right? Some of them might start before this, and the more we can get our kids to understand that well, the more they can benefit from what sports provides, and it doesn't turn into an idol of usurping, their salvation and their love for Christ. It needs to be managed properly. Because here's some things that I want to end with that helps us realize about sports. We need to make it a means to an end, right? The reason that you're out there playing is ultimately that God would be glorified. That ultimately that there can be gospel conversations. That's what your kids should know. Like, you should be out there being salt and light on whatever basketball, soccer, flag football team that you're on. You should be salt and light to make people look at you and say, man, I want to learn more about Christ. Or I want to learn more about this church thing or this Bible thing that they keep talking about. That's what makes sports great, because there's a unique opportunity that you have of talking to certain people, connecting with certain people that are on your team. That's great. Like, one of the things that I enjoy doing is coaching my son, and partly because there's an opportunity that I get with 10 other families for the next 8 to 10 weeks, where I get to love on their kids and coach their kids and have interactions with them that I wouldn't get any other way, right? They drop their kids off with me. They trust the kids with me. They see how I interact with the kids, and all of that I try to keep in mind. Sometimes it's tempting when you start winning and losing and all that stuff, but the whole point in coaching for me, the reason I do it, and I try to express to my son why I do it, is so that we get chances to advance the gospel and to preach the gospel to people and invite them to church. It's cool to see when I got a kid from my team that shows up at a summer camp or that's in Awana right now. That's what it's about, right? And that's what I want to remind him. It's a means to an end. It's a means to an end. Whatever level that God blesses you with, you may get up to college and have to say, I'm on this college team to glorify God. That's what I want to do. And I want to be salt and light, whatever I'm doing, because it's a means to an end. Take benefits and the lessons, right? When you win, there's a good thing, but we should always be teaching our kids humility when they win, how to put others before ourselves. And when you lose, I like to call it more learnings. What happened there? How are you going to respond to it? When adversity strikes, there's an opportunity where we get to teach them how to respond in a Christ-like manner and how God would call us to respond based on his word. But again, you get all of that in sports. When we manage it properly, we can do these things. As I alluded to, it's a great opportunity for outreach. Like, the sports network is great for outreach, unlike many others, right? Because you just have this camaraderie with your team. You start to meet other families. You're sitting in the stands with them. If you're watching your child play, you start to meet these other parents you wouldn't normally meet. Kids come over, and all of this interaction that you have, great opportunity to think about being a witness to them. Even your attitude out there as parents, even your attitudes out there as kids. When the referee makes a bad call, because they're human beings and they're going to make bad calls, when your kid understands that, and you can translate that and say, hey, you know what? They fall short. Guess what? We all fall short. And we take that back to the gospel and say, you know what? The beauty about us falling short in Christ is that he saves us because of that. Even though we fall short, he's died on the cross for us. Like, all of those conversations are great, even within sports, when we manage it properly. And here's one of my favorite quotes by Vodi Bakum. He said this: if I teach my son how to keep his eye on the ball, but fail to teach him to keep his eyes on Christ, I have failed as a father. So powerful. You can train your kid all day long, right? You can have your kid in all of these, 2-3 days a week in training for sports. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying watch out for it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But if you're going to have your kid training 2 or 3 days a week in sports, you better be training them 4 or 5 days in God's word, if not more. You have to be, because if they start to sense from you that there's more emphasis and you get more joy and you get more excited about them playing sports than you do about them being in God's word, they will take that, and that's what will be developed in their mind. So sports are great, but again, if you fail to keep them on their eyes on Christ, we're failing as fathers, we're failing as mothers. That's the most important thing. Eternally, nobody's going to be looking at what school you played at, what position you played. The only thing that's going to matter eternally is, do we have Christ or not? That's it. And so we must keep our eyes focused on that as we train create these habits and routines for our kids beginning today, knowing that they'll make a difference 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, when they become parents, when they even become grandparents, which is scary to think, or you become grandparents. Scary to think about, but that time will come quickly, and you want to be able to put a lasting legacy that was pointed to Christ in everything that they did. All right. Well, that's it for this portion of it. So I want to go ahead and call my wife up here, and we'll take some questions based on this, or whatever you want. But make sure we are in screen. Yep. Take a seat right there. So, yeah, we got about 20 minutes or so. Any questions when it comes to what we talked about today, or anything I can expand on, or if you want to hear my wife's perspective and you got enough of me talking, she can fill up the next 20 minutes.
I have two questions. One's for both of them and one's for Chelsea. For the kids, like, as you're trying to build this perspective for them when it comes to sports, of like being a witness or working hard and it's not all about you. Like, of course, the natural ways to just always improve myself and like be the best, you know? And there's probably an element of that, like discipline and stuff that's really good, but like, how do you help enforce like it's not about you being the best, or it's not about, it shouldn't be all consuming, because I can understand how it could become that way. Mm-hmm. For a kid. I didn't play sports, but like I can see how that would be like, that's what you're thinking about, you know? And of course, it's like you're teaching them that, but how do you just kind of teach and then hope that they'll mature and come to like see the truth of that, or like how do you instill that with your kids while they're young, in that perspective?
Yeah, I would just say, and I'll let you take that as well, but reminding them always, as the Bible tells us, that we should always be putting others before ourselves, right? And so that part of it is huge. It's one thing to go out there and try to be the best, or try your best, as we want to work hard as unto the Lord. So all of that is fine. You do have to remind them. And so some of it is finding those opportunities where, and asking them, why they want to do that, and starting to talk to them about that at an early age, because that's the competitive nature. And if you think about Pastor Mike's book, his recent book, Envy, that's a huge part of it. Because when you look at envy, there's a fine line between I want to do this and I have ambition because I want to work hard, and I want to work hard unto the Lord. But then there's also that fine line of I'm starting to do this because I kind of like the high fives, or I kind of like, and I think from what I've seen already, you start to see that in how they respond to things. So one of the things that I can see just even from my kids is like, if they score a basket or something like that, are they celebrating afterwards? If their other teammates score, are they high-fiving them? Or are they talking about themselves after the game more so than talking about the team? And so there's little, I think, signs that can kind of see what they're thinking about. Are they thinking about the team, or are they constantly thinking about me, me, me? And so we try to have conversations about that. But yeah, I think it's a fine line as far as you just always asking them, why are you doing that, or the motive behind it, and just kind of looking out for those little clues.
Yeah, I think because sports are like disconnected from church, when kids are seeking to improve their skills, it can, there's the same mentality even within church, right? Like, we always have to check our hearts and our motives why we want to be better at something, right? Like, even if your son wants to pursue ministry, he could be studying the Bible and trying to refine his speaking skills for the wrong motives. And I think that's emphasized in sports, or sometimes we disconnect it because it's sports, it's not church related, but it's really the same. It's just checking their heart and why they want to be more excellent at something. Is it for their glory, or is it for God's glory? And so I think that's why sports, or just doing things outside of the church, are so helpful, because it helps train our kids to make sure what they're doing is for the right reasons. And so, yeah, like Kellen said, it's reminding them that, yes, we want to work hard because we want to honor God with our time. And some kids are really gifted, right? You get kids who are just naturally athletic. I was an athlete myself too, and I was raised in the church and had a different upbringing, but there is a lot more of that focus and then especially in the sports world, there's a lot of, secular families who are praising them for being so good. Like, there's a lot of opportunities to have those teachable moments about, there's going to be a lot of people patting you on the back, saying you're so good, trying to puff you up, but again, bringing them back to the Lord. So I think that's where sports are so beneficial if we're really intentional about leveraging those teaching opportunities to say, you're getting a lot of praise, right? Because that can happen within the church too. Wow, your son's so smart. He knows all the Bible questions. That sounds like it's just as harmful as them getting a lot of praise on a court. And so, I just think we need to go onto a team or, piano lessons or whatever it is, saying I just want to make sure we leverage these opportunities to point them back to why we do things, why we work hard, why we want them to be better. It's not for our glory, but.
Yeah, and I think they make it pretty clear. I mean, you think about Jesus, what he was talking to the Pharisees. He's like, you love greetings in the marketplace, right? You love the best seats in the synagogues. It's like, if you just watch, like the kids, especially at that young age, aren't clever enough to necessarily mask it. And so you start to see it come out. It's like, okay, you celebrate a little too hard on that one. Like, let's bring it back to why we're doing this, right? And we want to be honoring to Christ. So I think a lot of it you'll start to see if you just watch out for it. But having those conversations of back to the heart of it, like you were saying, it's good. Yeah, one more question. This is just no, go for it. We got some time. We'll.
Okay. I'm not quite sure how to ask it, but for Chelsea, like, I didn't grow up with sports at all, doing going to events or anything. But Ryan was sports all his life. So for me, like, I kind of anticipate Jack being involved in sports if he wants to, and like even in his youth, if we have him in sports, later on. But to me, honestly, it's an intimidating world, and feels like, oh, is that going to dominate our entire schedule? Is that going to dominate like everything? And I've expressed to Ryan like the thought of like going to a game all night is really unpleasant. But I know if it's my kid, it's like an idea. But
Sure.
how do you, like, as a mom, help manage that, like, with their life? Like, it's a good thing. I totally see the benefit of sports. Yeah. Just for me personally, it seems intimidating, and like, how would I manage that as a mom? With
Good question.
helping other things be just as important, whether it's their education or their souls, or friends. How do you go about that? I know you're an athlete, so you have that perspective.
Yeah. Well, so is your question more like, how can you prepare your heart to be ready to do something that you think is intimidating, or managing that potentially being a part of your day, like, because it's foreign to you? Is it both?
I guess it's both, but maybe more so like as a mom, how are you managing that for your kids? Like helping them keep it in perspective.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to, again, the conversations we have with them on why we're doing them. And like Kellen, his last point, if they see that church remains a priority, right? It's keeping your family's priorities in check, because that's going to speak more volumes than what you say. And I think even just in the intimidation factor of sports, since you mentioned it, is so good for us to be out of our comfort zones, and there is so many witnessing opportunities, like, in the world of sports. Majority of them are secular. They're saying things on the sidelines that we wouldn't allow our kids to say. Like, we're able to really be lights in a dark world, and so it's kind of neat to be forced or be strategic in, I think, those atmospheres, which is just exciting. That God's even put it on your heart now to be praying for you to be, flexible and for whatever it is that your kids end up doing or your family decide to do. But I just think managing the home is, again, sitting down and remembering, like, okay, sitting down with your calendar and praying through and say, God, are these the things you want our family to be doing? Is there an area in our life we're spending too much time, not enough time? And allowing your kids to be involved in that. And there are going to be things our kids want to do that we have to say no to. Like, we have 4 kids. Like, we just don't have the means for all of them right now to be in sport. I mean, the littlest one's 1. But, like, if I had one or we weren't involved in church, my 4-year-old would for sure be playing soccer already or something. We just don't have the bandwidth.
Not soccer.
Not soccer. But, yeah, similar to Kellen, I wasn't raised in a Christian home, but church or sports were my church. I mean, every Sunday. I mean, changing in the car, like that was my life. And it's been really neat, and we're a testimony to see how God can change our hearts to where it's just not that important anymore. We're going to leverage it for the gospel, and we want our kids to work hard, and yeah, we would love for them to be athletic, but we've kind of let go of that having to be the case. Like, we used to always bank on them being athletic to get a scholarship. Now it's like, hopefully they go to CBI. I don't know if that answers your question,
But the intimidation factor is, I'll just add that most, like, until you get, I mean, you might get a few, but I feel like until you get closer to junior high is where you really have the intense parents. Early on, like the YMCA and all that stuff, half of the parents never play sports. They don't care about it. They're just dropping their kids off, and they just want to keep them busy. So you'll be surprised to find out, like, oh, you don't want to be here either, right? And then all of a sudden you make a connection there. But the point that you made, that perspective will change a little bit when it's your child out there, because you'll go to see them. You may not care about the sport, but you're like, hey, I just want to go see them play and get better and work hard. So it's common.
I'm thinking as you're speaking and questioning like of all these things for us now that our son's playing, because our life is so like involved with church and people who love the Lord. It grows your compassion to be in atmospheres like that for the lost.
Yeah.
Because if we have our lives only consumed with church events and our families know the Lord, you start to grow a little callous to the reality of like, we are to go make disciples.
Yeah.
And so I just think that can motivate us in doing the things that we're like, I don't fit in. That's good, so let that be an encouragement, but time to pray through it.
That's a great question. What else?
I guess I have one. Our son isn't quite in sports yet. He just turned 3.5, but whenever we go to the park or something, we pass by anything, he just wants to get on the field and just participate. But so we foresee ourselves, plugging him in soon. You as parents both play sports. You were coached differently. Just sports is intense, right? So as parents, did you guys ever get into situations where you coach or teach your children differently and you don't see eye to eye as parents?
Oh, like in the way, like just in the world of sports?
Or just, like, let's just say he's like, you gotta go get it. I'm like, well, that's too intense. Like, relax, he's only 3, Like,
Totally.
there are moments where you don't see eye to eye as husband and wife, the way you teach or you participate, taking your kids.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that is spot on. It happens. I end up being more intense, and she has to reel me in. And that's again, I'll just be honest with you. For me coaching my son, that's the temptation that I have to watch that line, because I played, at a competitive level. Then I kind of want my son to be that, and I have to constantly remind myself about my son that, God gave him to me as a gift to train up in godliness, right? In fear and admonition of the Lord, not to make another Kellen part 2. And so that temptation for me is to be like, you should be practicing every day because I practice every day. You should do this. You should want it more because I wanted it more. And even the way I can coach him and be harder on him, because again, I talked about the investments that we have they set us up for. That's how my dad was to me. So I almost expect, like, I'm going to be this way to you and you'll figure it out like I figured it out. Well, that's not the case. And my motive is different than my parent. My ultimate goal for my child is that they would, Lord willing, be saved, not that be a professional athlete. Mm-hmm. But there are times where that can creep back in of, it gets into the competitive mode of a game or a season, and it's like, okay, I want to kind of win this championship now. And she does a great job of pulling me back about, like, okay, it's not about that. Like, there's parents out there that need to be invited to church, and there's all these, these kids need to see that, as opposed to seeing me as a, coach that wants to win. So I think for our family, and you can speak on that as well, is like, I can do that, but it's more so on I guess my oldest is the only one playing now. My second is my girl, so she can she doesn't get that intensity as he does from me, but I have to watch myself, because when I get intense like that, it's typically because I'm trying to make him like me, as opposed to saying, how does God want to use me and shape me to train him up to be what God wants him to be. So I have to pull back and she was raised, she was, played sports. We played at the same college, and so she has that about her, but she also has that more calmness to say, okay, that's probably a little bit too much, or you're riding them too hard.
Yeah, and I think it's a team effort, and you can, if you see certain tendencies in one another that you can be praying about, right? But also to make sure those arguments aren't happening in front of the kids, like if I see there's a certain tendency when he's coaching or whatnot, just praying about it with him. It sounds more dramatic than it is, but just saying like, let's just make sure, like praying before the games about why we're there and what the focus is. And again, because if the kids start to see the sports become like a confrontation between the parents, that speaks volumes about the importance of sports over even, your conduct with one another. So again, it's such a teaching opportunity, and but it's good as parents. It sanctifies us, right? Because you start to get like a little into it, and it's like, okay, Lord, like reel me in. And so just helping each other in that, journey of sports, of even just sanctification, where it's like I see certain things I'm getting angry or frustrated or irritated, or I'm making this not about the ultimate goal. And so you can partner in that. But yeah, I was raised in a home where I had to work really hard. I mean, I did work really hard. I was the first one there, the last one to leave. My dad instilled hard work ethic. But even though he wasn't and isn't a believer, his motive wasn't, Jesus either. And so it's been neat to see how the Lord's allowed both of our upbringings to kind of help complement each other and allow us just to kind of store those both well, ultimately for a bigger, better purpose.
And I'll say this: if any of your kids get involved in sports like that it can't bleed over into everything else. Right? If your kid doesn't meet your expectations in their game, or they weren't working hard, then that can't. Just like with discipline, I think y'all probably been there, had a session on that. Just disciplining your kids, like it's for that moment, because we want to teach them, we want to correct them, we want to train them up, but then afterwards, it doesn't linger for the whole rest of the day of like, okay, I'm mad at you because you did this. It's like, no, we teach them to ask for forgiveness, and we forgive them as Christ has forgiven us, and now we're back to what we were doing before. But there's that section, even with sports, it's like, here it is, we're here, and then that doesn't bleed over, because I think, again, to what you were saying and what we were talking about earlier, the more you make that, if they play a good game, then all of a sudden you take them out for ice cream, and they get, whatever dinner they want that night because they played a good game, then that's what they're going to start chasing from you, right? They're going to try to perform for you, as opposed to saying, hey, that was great. I'm happy for you, played a good game, or you played a bad game, let's learn. But what excites me more is when you study God's word. Like when you have Bible, I get more excited about that. And those are the things that they're going to watch from you, and they're going to see what gets you excited. And if it's not, coming to church or talking to them about church, they're easily going to gravitate towards that.
Or celebrate, them high-fiving their teammates.
Yeah.
The
when they don't win. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah. Right here, and then Kellen.
Can you imagine a scenario where you would find like a specific team environment to be too toxic, too much of a negative influence for your child to remain on the team? Like, would you do that proactively, or would you wait until it started to affect your child's actions and retroactively, reactively remove them from the environment?
Yeah, I would just say we're not at that yet. I guess we could be, but the oldest is 8. And right now, because everybody's still trying to figure out his first time playing, you don't have typically what you're talking about as they get older. And it's like, I'm trying to get my kid a scholarship. So now all of a sudden parents get nasty, the coaches get nasty, and it's a different environment. But I think to that point is the more you can start training the kids earlier on of the means of sports, right? And if it's a situation where I have to pull my kid off, then I would. And one where we've had to pull our kid off of certain teams is if they practice Thursday nights, right? And because we want them to see, just because I know you want to be on this team, your friends are on this team, but good, look, they practice Thursday nights, and you got to go to Awana. And if that means you can't be on this team, you got to be on a different one, then so be it. There was a league that we had him in that half of the games were on Saturday, half of them were on Sunday. We ended up having to take him. He had started practice. I started coaching that team. I said, I can't do this. It was a shock to me that y'all were doing Sundays. It was told to me Saturdays, and had to put him in another league. And so it wasn't a toxic environment like you're saying, but at the same time, we had to take them off because I want them to know it doesn't replace church. It doesn't. Like we can't do Thursdays. We got to figure out something else. But I think, there's some lessons in that, but then you have to pray about that line of like, all right, there's lessons that I can teach my kid and help them through versus, all right, now this has started to affect them. And I gotta be a parent and say, you're not gonna play on that team because, coach is cursing up a storm every time, and we got to find something different. So, I think it's different depending on, your kid, but I would always toe more closer towards, I want to protect my kid before it gets too far for they find out the hard way, and then I got to remove them. And then hopefully as they get older, then they can start to have that sort of gauge and discernment later on. Yeah. Good question. Kellen.
Maybe this is like a question I can ask both of you guys like later in a few years, but have you guys thought about at all, I don't know, when your kids do get to that age of, okay, we're thinking about college, we're thinking about scholarships, obviously to get to that place, you have to do things in youth sports like club or higher levels, the right team to get the right connections. So, have you guys thought about that at all? And is there a line that you draw? I mean, obviously, church has to come first. God has to come first. But I don't know. Is there any more that you can help me to understand that you've thought about that stage of it when your kids are maybe junior high school, getting to that stage?
Yeah.
I personally haven't thought much about it because they might not want to play, and I don't want to dwell and be concerned about something that might not even be a reality for my children. But to your point, I know that in order to make it to that level, like you do have to play on a travel team, and especially nowadays, and now there's a whole financial aspect of sports where it's like I just don't know if we'll have the means to put our kids in travel ball. So there's so many components to consider, and I've got a glimpse into that because my nephew plays travel or club soccer, and just kind of getting an insight, because I think when I was doing it, I didn't really take into factor how much it was, and again, church wasn't a part of our life, and so it was a non-issue. So yeah, I don't think I've thought much about it, and I don't necessarily think it's that it's not possible, but I do think the amount of coaches out there who are empathetic to the fact that this is a Christ-centered family and they can't make it to all their practices and games are, less and less. But I don't think it's impossible. And some will honor that. And there's just so many components to consider that I don't think I have a straight answer. But I do know that for us, church is a priority. And if it just comes to the reality that it is a conflict and not doable, then that's going to be a hard reality for our children. And I think just through a lot of prayer, God will make that really clear. If the Lord wants these kids to play collegiate sports, there's going to be means in which He does that. And maybe it won't be at a D1, Pac-10 school. Maybe it's going to be at a D2, D3. But that will be the compromise. So I don't know if that answered your question, but we're right ahead of you, so we'll let you know by the time your kids get there.
There's no Pac-10 either.
Oh, see, that's how disconnected I am. The Lord really changed my heart when it came to sports.
Doesn't exist. No, that's a deeper one. But
what is it now?
There's no Pac-2. No, it's
Did
done.
you know that?
Yeah. I mean, you were there 5 years ago, but no, that was recent. It was just this year. They're gone. Everybody's gone. There's no Pac. But yeah, I think, I don't know. And some of you in here might have a kid that is extremely gifted and talented in something. And it's always going to be that tug and pull of I want them to be involved. And maybe this is something that God can use. And that's possible, right? But it always goes back to teaching them the motive behind it. It's like if you got, this once in a generational talent baseball player and doors start to open up, maybe God will use that, but you have to check in your heart, am I doing this because I want to see my kid, get to the pro level, or am I doing this because here's something that maybe God has given us a platform to continue to use? And I just, again, coming from experience, obviously God's word, the more and more you start to get excited about that, and push them to do that and fill up the calendar with training sessions and practices and tournaments and all of that stuff, you're just making it harder for them to see that Christ is truly the focal point. Can you do both? Yeah, but as Chelsea was saying, I think it gets harder because, you won't be able to do everything that the secular kid can do. He can train 4 days a week, and that's not a problem. You may not be able to do that. He can go any weekend, he can go away. Not a problem for them, but your kid won't be able to do that. And you see some kids that can go up to college, but it just gets harder. And the more we can not put all of our emphasis on that to say, they got to get a scholarship, they got to get that. And we can say, I want them to be saved. And I want to do everything in my humanly power to lead them to Christ. If you can say that and then you still are doing the training and all that stuff, then good. It's just hard because the world doesn't have to deal with a lot of stuff that should deal with. They're not going to have to balance a lot of stuff that you're going to balance, knowing your priority is different. And the other part of it is, if God has it for them to be talented in somewhere, the great part about this day and age is there's videos. Like back in the day, college coach would have to come see you in person. There's YouTube video. There's all that stuff to where if a college coach needs to find you, they will find you. May be a little difficult because you're not at every single tournament, but they'll find it. They'll find any kid that they want to find. You can't really hide talent anymore like you used to because there's so much exposure. So, but I'll be your kid's agent. Be the agent and the pastor. I'll help them. No. All right. Well, thanks for having us here this morning. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you didn't get any questions, you come see us afterwards, or we're around. We'd love to talk because. Again, all of it, not just sports, the healthy habits, the routines, and all this stuff, super important. But remember, the things you do today, those are going to be the same things that your kids talk about with their kids, and that's how it's going to shape their lives, just like it did for you. I'm sure you can think about it with your parents. Same thing happens. So be disciplined about that and be intentional. But let me pray, and then I will dismiss us. God, thank you for giving us a gift and our children. Lord, I just pray that you would help us, give us wisdom, discernment. This is not easy. All kids are different, even within our own household. The way that they are uniquely designed and created and how they think and how they act are different. And Lord, I just pray that you would give us wisdom and strength to have the ultimate goal be Christ, that they would be saved, that we would all create legacies that they look back and say, my parents loved the Lord and they taught me how to love the Lord. That'd be the most important thing, more important than any job, any career, or any profession, sports, or anything like that. If they love the Lord, if they get saved, we can be sure that they have eternal life in Christ. So help that to be our focus above all else, but help us use these gifts that you give us in life to be a means to an end, that they would teach us many things that we can use for your glory and your honor. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.